The alarm slammed to life. Red strobes cut across racks of rifles, shadows jerking on concrete. The steel door locked, and a digital clock began to fall 60 seconds. 4 recruits circled one woman. They thought she was just a contractor, the quiet one with a clipboard, but her stance told another story. Calm, balanced, deadly. Every tick of the clock drew them closer to a lesson they'd never forget, because in 32 seconds, all 4 would be on the ground. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. 4 recruits thought the armory was their hunting ground. They saw a quiet woman with a clipboard and thought she was prey. What they didn't know was that Danielle Mercer had spent years with SEAL Team 5. The night the lockdown lights flashed red, time slowed. A countdown glowed above the exit, 0026. Every second hammered like a drumbeat. Mercer didn't panic. She mapped the room instantly. Cutler in front, Holt circling left, Grant at the door, Briggs looming heavy on the right. 4 bodies, 1 trap. Her hand brushed the safety panel near the racks, not to trigger it, just to confirm its place. Her eyes scanned distances, angles, surfaces, every calculation precise. She exhaled once, slow and steady. In the flashing red light, her shadow looked larger than theirs. Still waters hide storms. 3 weeks earlier, Fort Clyburn Ordnance Depot was quiet. Rows of rifles glinted under fluorescent bulbs. The smell of oil and concrete hung in the air. At 0630 sharp, Mercer arrived. Same time every day, same plane fatigues, same silence. She signed in, worked her list, and vanished before evening chow. Most soldiers barely noticed her. Civilian badge, logistics contractor, no unit, no patch, no rank. To them, she was background, but her movements betrayed something else. She stripped weapons with muscle memory, not hesitation. She positioned herself near exits without effort. Her boots bore miles of real terrain, not parade ground polish. The older NCOs gave her quiet nods. They recognized discipline. But the younger recruits, freshly shipped in, saw only mystery. Mystery bred arrogance. The 4 who circled her called themselves a pack. Ryan Cutler, chin high, son of a colonel. Eli Grant, mouth always running, grin always too wide. Noah Briggs, built like stone, temper short as a fuse. Darren Holt, restless and reckless, hungry to prove. They weren't the worst recruits ever, but they carried failure. Each had washed out of something airborne. Ranger, intel, engineers. None of them admitted it. They blamed politics, blamed instructors, blamed luck. At Fort Clyburn, they wanted redemption. Instead, they found a target. Mercer's silence became their obsession. The first attempt was casual. Mercer sat at a cleaning bench, breaking down an M27 IAR. Her hands moved in rhythm, parts laid out with surgical precision. Cutler and Grant drifted close. She handles that like she's shipping out. Cutler muttered loud enough to carry. Grant smirked. Maybe she's practicing, pretending she's a real soldier. Mercer didn't flinch. She set a spring aside, reassembled the receiver, logged the serial. Not a glance their way. Cutler bristled. At home, people listened when he spoke. Here, the contractor dismissed him like background noise. That sting dug deeper than he'd admit. The second attempt came in the hallway. Holt shouldered into her path, knocking a container from her arms. Cleaning kits clattered across the floor. Grant laughed. Briggs muttered, clumsy. They waited for a glare, a retort, anything. Mercer only knelt, collected each kit, stacked them neatly, and walked on. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was dismissal, and that cut sharper than words. Master Sergeant Leon Barrett noticed. 30 years had taught him the difference between mischief and danger. He saw how the recruits hovered near the armory too often. He saw Mercer's eyes track movements like radar. He stopped them once in the motor pool, arms crossed. You boys know the saying, the most dangerous person in the room is usually the one who never talks. Cutler straightened. Just being friendly. Sergeant? Barrett's stare lingered until the smirks faded. Then he walked on, muttering under his breath. You'll learn. But pride blinded them. They didn't hear the warning. 2 nights later, Mercer worked late. The depot was empty. Corridors dark. The armory ran on night cycle, half lit. Shadows stretched long. She checked suppressors, pen tapping softly against the clipboard. Her ears picked up faint echoes, 4 sets of boots moving with false casualness. The door creaked open, too soft for anyone with clearance. 4 silhouettes entered, spacing deliberate. 1 by the door, 2 flanking, 1 pressing forward. Mercer's stance shifted barely an inch. Pen balanced between her fingers. Weight lowered, center calm. She inhaled once, slow, steady. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. She already knew the rhythm of their steps. Cutler's voice broke the silence. You always this dedicated contractor. His tone dripped with challenge, not curiosity. Grant chuckled near the exit. Maybe she's hiding in here, afraid of people. Holt circled closer, eyes locked, searching for reaction. Mercer lifted her head at last. Bays closed. Find somewhere else. Her tone was flat. No fear. No invitation. Just a line in the sand. Cutler smiled, mistaking calm for surrender. We're not done here. Mercer returned her eyes to the clipboard, pen scratching another line. Her voice cut quiet but sharp. Yes, you are. They didn't walk away. Arrogance never does. They mistook silence for weakness again, and again, and again. By the end of that week, their plan hardened. Confront her when she was alone. Push until she broke. They thought they were building a story of dominance. Instead, they were writing their own downfall. On Friday night, Mercer remained in the armory after hours. The depot was silent, only the faint buzz of lights filling the air. She closed a logbook, set it aside, and moved toward the suppressor racks. The door opened. Boots spread. 4 shadows moved into position. The trap was set. The system read unauthorized movement. Alarms triggered. Red lights erupted. Sirens screamed. The door slammed shut. A timer blinked alive above the exit, 0:60. Cutler smirked, mistaking noise for control. Grant blocked the door. Briggs cracked his knuckles. Holt clenched and unclenched his fists. Mercer stood still, shoulders squared, gaze steady. Her body shifted into a stance only one kind of person ever learned. The countdown began. Irzazio, 59. Irzazio, 58. Zio, 57. The fight hadn't started yet, but the outcome was already decided. The week before the lockdown, the depot felt ordinary. Trucks rumbled through the gates, engines loud against the quiet of the armory. Mercer moved through it all unnoticed, as steady as the clocks on the walls. Her hands flew across checklists. She logged serials, tagged scopes, and sealed crates with practiced precision. No wasted motion, no conversation, just discipline disguised as routine. CCTV caught every detail. A lens in the corner zoomed in on her, stripping an M27. Springs and pins clinked softly against the bench. To most, it was paperwork. To anyone who had trained for combat, it was proof. Cutler stood nearby, watching longer than he should. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as Mercer reassembled the rifle faster than most instructors. He muttered, "No way, she's just a contractor." Grant laughed, voice bouncing across the room. "Maybe she practices for fun. Pretend soldier with a clipboard?" Briggs only grunted. Holt smirked, already itching to test the theory. Mercer didn't glance their way. She placed the rifle back into its slot, logged the entry, and moved on. That silence cut deeper than any insult. Their second push came in the motor pool. Engines roared, mechanics shouted, Sparks flew from welding arcs. Mercer crouched at a side table, inventorying night vision optics stacked in foam. The recruits drifted in like shadows. Cutler's tone carried over the noise. "You're everywhere, contractor." Trying to look busy, Grant blocked the bay entrance. Leaning casual against the frame, Briggs rested one arm on a tool chest. Holt circled wide, pretending to check gauges. Mercer kept writing, "Bay's closed. Find another spot." Her tone was flat, no hint of threat. Grant chuckled. "See, that always thinks she's in charge." Holt leaned closer, voice sharp enough to cut. "Or maybe she just thinks she's better than us." Mercer set the pen down, lifted her eyes at last. Calm, steady, unblinking. She locked onto Holt and said 2 words. "Walk away." The mechanic at the Humvee froze. He saw the look in her eyes. So did Barrett, who had been passing by. The room went still, the hiss of compressors suddenly louder. Cutler forced a laugh to break the silence. "Scared," he muttered, but Barrett's stare told him otherwise. The sergeant walked closer, voice low and deliberate. "You boys know the saying, the most dangerous person in a room is usually the one who doesn't talk." His words hung heavy, carried more weight than a threat. Grant's grin faltered. Holt's smirk thinned. Briggs shifted, uncertain. Only Cutler kept his chin high, pride blinding him. Barrett shook his head, muttered, "You'll learn," and walked on. That night in the barracks, the pack replayed every second. Grant mocked Barrett's line, exaggerating the tone until they laughed again. Holt leaned back on his bunk, eyes bright with defiance. "Dangerous. She's a civilian. What's she gonna do, log us to death?" He drew laughter, but Briggs's chuckle was half-hearted. Doubt lingered in the edges of his stare. Cutler cut the noise with certainty. "She disrespected us. We can't let that slide." His pride was the fuse. Holt's recklessness was the spark. Together, the explosion was inevitable. Mercer continued her routine. Morning runs around the perimeter. Pace sharp, breathing steady. She paused at corners, scanning angles like muscle memory demanded. Most didn't notice, but Barrett did. He watched her vary her routes, change rhythm, break patterns. It was reconnaissance dressed as exercise. He didn't need proof to know. She wasn't ordinary. At chow one evening, Holt pushed harder. He muttered something sharp, just loud enough for the tables to hear. The words made 2 recruits at the next bench glance over in surprise. Mercer stopped mid-step. She turned, set her tray down, and locked on to him. "Walk away," she said, tone razor thin. The room hushed. Even the clatter of forks stilled. Holt's grin wavered, then forced itself back. "See, she's afraid." The others laughed with him, but the sound rang hollow. Mercer sat, ate in silence, never once looking back. Inside, the math was already running. They wouldn't stop. Pride never does. 2 nights later, the depot slept. The armory lights dimmed into night cycle, shadows stretching across racks of steel. Mercer worked late, logging suppressors stacked in padded cases. Her pen tapped softly against the clipboard. Then she heard it. Boots. 4 sets, converging from different angles. Too even, too deliberate. The door creaked open. They entered in formation without knowing the name. Grant by the exit, Holt circling left, Briggs heavy to the right, Cutler moving straight at her. Mercer set the pen down, balanced between her fingers like a blade. Her body shifted, weight low, stance coiled. She inhaled once, slow and controlled. The armory hummed under dim light, waiting for impact. Outside, Barrett spotted movement through a window. 4 recruits where they didn't belong. His gut clenched. He reached for his radio, then stopped. He wanted to see if they understood the warning. He wanted to see if Mercer revealed what he already suspected. He stayed still, watching. Inside, the 4 recruits spread wider. Holt smirked, itching to make contact. Grant blocked the only exit. Cutler straightened his back like a commander preparing to give orders. Mercer lifted her head, eyes scanning each face. She didn't speak yet. She didn't need to. The air tightened, tension coiling in every shadow. The trap was set. The storm was seconds away. Grant leaned on the doorframe, voice mocking. Everyone here gets along but you. Why so antisocial? Contractor Mercer's voice was calm. You're in the wrong place. Holt laughed. Or maybe you are. His hand hovered too close, daring her. Barrett clenched his jaw outside the window. He knew the next move would tip everything. Inside, Mercer's shoulders rolled back, her eyes fixed on Holt's, then swept across the others. Still waters. Storm about to break. The lights overhead flickered. The alarm system sensed unusual vibration. Sirens armed in standby. The door's autolock clicked into place. The countdown began. 60 seconds. 4 against 1. The siren erupted without warning. Red strobes washed the walls, shadows jerking across racks of rifles. A countdown flared above the steel door. 060. 4 recruits froze in place for half a second. Then grins spread across their faces. They thought the alarm worked in their favor. They had no idea it had just sealed their fate. Mercer didn't flinch. She shifted her stance, weight balanced, eyes sharp. The room was mapped in her head, 4 threats, no exits, concrete floor, 0 margin for error. Cutler stood in front, pride stiffening his jaw. Holt moved left, jittery and eager. Grant leaned on the exit, blocking escape. Briggs cracked his knuckles on the right, mass heavy and threatening. Her breathing slowed. She timed it against the countdown. Euro 55, Euro 54, Euro 53. Years of training had drilled this into instinct. Holt struck first, as predicted. His hand shot out, fingers closing on her wrist. He expected resistance, maybe a pull away. Instead, Mercer pivoted into the grab. Her grip locked, twisted, and Holt's wrist bent at an angle it wasn't built for. His smirk snapped into pain. She spun her hips, dragging him forward, then hurled him into a weapons rack. Metal screamed as rifles rattled loose. The impact triggered vibration sensors, alarms wailing louder. Holt crashed down, clutching his arm, teeth clenched in shock. Grant reacted next, charging from the door. His laugh turned into a grunt halfway across the floor. Mercer dropped low, spun on her heel, and rose with a sharp elbow. The blow connected to his chest with brutal accuracy. His breath cut short, body folding. He stumbled backward, slamming into the steel frame he was meant to guard. Briggs roared, mass pounding across the concrete. He trusted size over skill, a mistake Mercer had seen too many times. She sidestepped, dropped her weight, and swept her leg across his ankles. Momentum did the rest. Briggs crashed hard, face first onto the floor. The thud echoed louder than the siren. He groaned, stunned, arms scrambling without power. Cutler was last. His pride burned hotter than fear. He lunged with desperation, arms wide, trying to smother her in brute force. Mercer surged forward instead of retreating. She drove her shoulder into his core, lifted with a burst of strength, and slammed him onto the tiles. The floor shook under the impact. Cutler gasped, blood running from his nose, vision blurring. His command dissolved into silence. The fight was over in less than 32 seconds. 4 recruits sprawled across the armory, broken by precision. The countdown still ticked. 0, 28, 00, 27, 00, 26. Mercer straightened, breath even, heartbeat steady. Her eyes swept the room, each opponent incapacitated, each weapon untouched. Holt writhed, clutching his wrist. Grant wheezed, coughing for air. Briggs lay dazed, rolling to his side. Cutler sat against a rack, pride shattered with blood on his lips. Mercer bent, picked up her clipboard, and placed it calmly on the shelf. Her composure made the room feel colder than the siren ever could. The recruits stared, eyes wide with disbelief. Their arrogance had met reality, and reality was merciless. The wall radio crackled alive. A voice cut through the chaos. Steady, commanding. Petty Officer Mercer. Stand down. The words froze the room harder than any blow. Petty officer, not contractor, not civilian. A title they hadn't imagined. Grant's face paled. Holt stammered. She's... Navy Cutler shook his head. Denial fighting truth. Mercer didn't turn. She kept her eyes on them, voice calm and sharp. I gave you every chance to walk away. You didn't take it. Her words landed heavier than her strikes. The recruits finally understood silence was never weakness. It was warning. She stepped to the supply shelf, pulled down a green case, and tossed it to the floor. A first aid kit slid open, gauze spilling onto the concrete. Patch yourselves up, she said. No mockery, no triumph, just command. The countdown reached 0005, 0004, 0003. The siren cut abruptly. Light steadied to white. The steel door unlocked with a metallic hiss. Mercer checked her watch, tucked the clipboard under her arm, and walked toward the exit. Her boots struck the floor in even rhythm. None of the recruits dared to move. Their silence now matched hers. At the threshold, she paused. Her eyes lingered on the wreckage racks rattled, recruits broken, kits scattered. She exhaled once, slow, and stepped out. The armory returned to stillness, except for the ragged breathing of four men who had just learned the hardest lesson of their lives. Outside, Barrett lowered his radio. He'd heard every second, seen enough through the window to confirm what instinct already knew. Mercer wasn't background. She wasn't invisible. She was dangerous by design. Inside, the recruits sat in stunned quiet. Grant's grin was gone. Holt's defiance had bled out with his pain. Briggs pressed a hand to his head, dazed. Cutler stared blankly, realizing pride had cost him everything. The legend was born in that silence. By morning, the story would spread through every corridor. 4 men tried to corner a contractor. 32 seconds later, they were the ones broken. And the truth no one could deny, Danielle Mercer wasn't just a contractor. She was a SEAL who chose silence until silence was no longer enough. The investigation began at dawn. A projector flickered in the base conference room, replaying the armory footage frame by frame. Colonel Adrian Whitlock sat at the head of the table, eyes fixed on the grainy images. 4 recruits surrounded Mercer. 32 seconds later, all 4 were on the floor. The recording paused with Mercer walking calmly through the door, clipboard under her arm, sirens fading. Whitlock didn't speak right away. He leaned back, fingers steepled, silence pressing heavier than words. Beside him, Master Sergeant Leon Barrett waited, posture rigid, gaze steady on the screen. Finally, Whitlock tapped the folder in front of him. Report says minimum necessary force. All weapons secure, controlled response. His tone was clipped. Barrett nodded once. The colonel opened a second folder, stamped bold red, classified. Inside lay photographs, commendations, and blacked out lines. He turned pages slowly, absorbing each detail. Danielle Mercer, Petty Officer, SEAL Team 5, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 deployment in Yemen, Navy Cross for pulling civilians and teammates out of a hostage kill zone. Then the medical file. Shrapnel at T12L1 surgery risks too high. 14 months of rehabilitation. Status pending medical discharge. Whitlock exhaled, the sound heavy in the room. We put a decorated SEAL in the armory, and 4 trainees thought she was prey. His jaw tightened. That's not just their mistake. That's ours. Barrett spoke quietly. She held back. Sir, could have killed them. Easily. What you saw on that tape was restraint. Whitlock closed the folder and stared at the ceiling. The sirens from the footage seemed to echo in his mind. Restraint saved us from funerals. By mid-morning, disciplinary files lined the colonel's desk. He signed each one with measured strokes, no hesitation. Ryan Cutler, medical discharge. Official note, poor judgment under stress. Psychological unsuitability. His injuries would heal, but his career ended in ink. Eli Grant, administrative separation, chronic misconduct, repeated defiance, pattern of failure to adapt. His file closed the door permanently. Noah Briggs reassigned to logistics. His concussion had cleared, but the assessment read unfit for combat environments. His strength would move crates, not carry rifles. Darren Holt suspended under probation. Final chance noted in bold. Reckless but salvageable. One step away from the same fate as the others. Whitlock initialed each line, then pushed the folders aside. Justice wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, bureaucratic, but final. Barrett stayed behind after the staff cleared the room. His eyes returned to the frozen frame of Mercer walking out of the armory. She's still serving, even if the Navy says otherwise. He said, the recruits don't realize how close they came. One more wrong move, and we'd be shipping bodies home. Whitlock nodded grimly, and the story would have been very different. He moved to the window overlooking the drill yard. Recruits jogged in tight formation, unaware of the storm that had passed. He turned back. Effective immediately new policy. Every contractor with military background gets a proper briefing to commanders. No more blind spots. Barrett listened as the colonel continued, and mandatory respect training for every incoming class. Civilians, contractors. Anyone on this base, they get treated with dignity. Period. Understood, sir, Barrett replied. His voice carried the weight of both respect and relief. The official report was sealed. Mercer never asked to see it. Her reassignment orders arrived quietly. Another transfer to another facility for evaluation. She packed her duffel without ceremony. One photograph slid into the side pocket, her SEAL team on a rooftop years earlier. Dust on their boots, fire in their eyes. Half of them gone now. Names etched into walls she no longer visited. She didn't say goodbye. She never did. She left the way she'd arrived, silent, steady, unnoticed until she was gone. The 4 recruits avoided her in those final days. Cutler kept to his bunk in the infirmary, bandages across his nose. Grant lost his grin, replaced by hollow stares. Briggs shuffled through corridors, head down, no swagger left. Holt hovered in silence, the weight of probation heavy on his shoulders. One evening, he managed to whisper, "Didn't know." Mercer looked at him once and replied, "Now you do. Nothing more, nothing less." Her last morning at Fort Clyburn came without fanfare. The sun cut sharp across the depot, shadows stretching over trucks and barracks. The base carried on, unaware of the shift happening beneath its surface. Inside a training room, a new class of recruits sat waiting. At the front, a young mechanic stood in coveralls, pointing to slides on weapon safety. Her voice carried authority born of competence, not rank. It was the same mechanic Briggs had once mocked. Now she instructed soldiers who scribbled notes fast to keep up. In the back row, Mercer sat quietly, civilian fatigues, cap pulled low. She took no notes, asked no questions. She simply watched. The mechanic glanced up once. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. A recognition passed between them. Wordless respect. Mercer nodded slightly, then lowered her gaze again. She didn't need acknowledgement. The moment was enough. Barrett walked past the classroom window. He saw Mercer one last time, seated in silence, and didn't step in. Some farewells weren't meant to be spoken. He muttered under his breath, "Still waters hide storms," and kept walking. Narration cut in, voice low, deliberate. Some people stay quiet because they have nothing to say. Others stay quiet because they've seen too much. Images flickered red alarms. Recruits sprawled on the armory floor. Mercer's calm eyes, the sealed folder stamped classified. The final frame lingered on her in the back row, a silent figure fading into the background. And the closing question hung heavy. If you were there, would you have walked away or tested the fuse of silence?